Bueno, buenas tardes para todos. Un gusto estar acá esta tarde y un gusto estar siempre.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, as it happens every year. Thank you. This event refers to three digital, and we are going through an extraordinary transformation phenomenon. And when we look at what's happening now, we can see how we've been looking at the impact of software in our organizations, the possibility of creating new experiences, our business model. The World Economic Forum speaks about the fourth industrial revolution. This has to do with the digital transformation, its speed and its impact on people and companies and organizations. This is a very interesting phenomenon, particularly because companies try to adapt to this new technology, and large corporations are trying to bring ideas from abroad, bringing in new talent to participate in these activities without the paradigms, without the preconcepts that limit the capacity of innovation in an organization. We can see how large companies are investing in accelerators, others are creating things, and as a way of reacting and see how innovation occurs, how it reaches certain business models, and how we can react more quickly to this digital transformation. And most certainly there is something here that we all share, and that's our relation with technology. And there is an enormous opportunity, an opportunity to generate differentiation, to differentiate value, to generate innovation that once again allows a company not only to make a difference, but that it is pertinent. This question of the speed of changes can be measured in many ways, but an interesting indicator is the lifespan of SAP 500. Now, when we see these projections from 2007 to 2015, we can see how the life of companies, the lifespan has changed, how we accelerate that lifespan within the S&P 500 index. We could measure it in many ways, but in fact, many companies, in one way or the other, we can see that there is enormous capacity for innovation, but there is also an enormous threat. And I think there is an extraordinary example. Mondo is a British company. It's a startup. It's the first startup to which the Central Bank of England gave a license to operate as a bank. It's a bank with no branches. It's a bank that the only thing it does, and it does it extremely well, it manages salary payment accounts and credit cards to collect your salary. It has a license to operate as a bank, but it has no branches, and it does it very well. One of its differences is what they do with that information and how the bank makes recommendations on the basis of the information it has. It tells me, for example, all your neighbors living in your same block are spending 20% less water than you do. You can save if you do the same, and that's an opportunity. So, in fact, it's when we look at the phenomenon at present, I think that there are certain concepts, certain things that we should all agree on. The first one has to do with how technology evolves. It evolves exponentially. Then users' expectations, they grow and they change more rapidly. We have to innovate not only to make a difference, but also to keep abreast. And technology isn't everything in terms of innovation. The reality is that for all companies, innovate has a technological component, that allows us to generate new experiences, to connect with users, to analyze our data, to develop better products, to provide better services, or to improve the way we do things internally. Another interesting issue, which I think is very important to take into account, is that competition comes from unexpected places. It comes from places, in our analysis of the future, we look into what our main competitors are doing, what do they do if they do similar things to ours, but competition may come from very complex areas. I shared a few minutes ago a sentence that was the slogan of the 2013 event, was every company is a software company. This means the dependence of all organizations on creating software, of creating capacity from the technological standpoint to provide better information, to create better analysis and be able to predict and be in contact with users. If every company is a software company, then who's got the capacity to create new realities? And that's something that I think developers, and when I talk about developers, I say this generically, startups, designers, architects, all those who are involved in this field, we have enormous opportunities to create things around software, and we have the possibility of creating new experiences, new realities that go beyond the experience, to create new realities. And to create new realities, we've got perhaps a definition that is extremely important, which is to choose the tools and the platforms correctly. Tools and platforms that allow us to create that new reality. Any of us, when we produce software, when we develop software, we try and stand on those technologies that allow us for a good part of the problem solved, but that provides more intelligence than we can think of. If I'm an expert on health, I would like to take advantage of all the capabilities of technology in that term, to use artificial intelligence to adapt a certain treatment on the features and characteristics of this patient. So we have to have an adequate platform, and if we find it, that's a key difference. Within this context, we have tools and platforms to build solutions. On the other hand, for Microsoft, for instance, one of the groups of our technology, we understand that it's a key issue to focus on digital transformation. And that's key. For many, many years, I have told you about the cloud evolution. We started talking about cloud. There was people who were skeptical. What about security and this and that and broadband and so on? That's a reality. Cloud is a reality to such an extent that it forms part of the transparent reality, and it's behind any digital experience. Why is it transparent? Well, because when I want to develop a solution, it's not the core of innovation. The core of innovation is what I'm going to do, particularly those components from the cloud that are really providing me with a different and differential solution. I would like to share with you some groups of technologies which I think are erupting right now and are agents of emotions. We have a long list of components. There are lots of building blocks here that I can adapt them depending on the scenario. For instance, if I'm thinking of a solution of Internet of Things, I would have a certain architecture to manage the scenario of enormous number of events that are produced in a short interval, and I can process that information, and I must be able to analyze that information. And that's the value of the technology. Now, as a reference architecture for the Internet of Things can be applied to many other scenarios, and I'd like to share some of you with you as an example. The first thing has to do with machine learning. We've been talking about machine learning for some time now, and that it's changed our previous lives. Now, when we go to the state-of-the-art of algorithm combined with the capacity of technology processing, together with the apps that, independent of the business we are in, this generates a combination of elements that makes machine learning the beginning. And I'm saying the beginning because I think we are in a very early stage of all this. Machine learning, at the end of the day, is to take the value of data. That is to analyze information, to be able to extract intelligence from that information, so that certain systems can make automatic decisions on the basis of that information, or systems that see some or have some insights that it would be very difficult for us to analyze enormous volumes of data, identify patterns, to be able to classify data and predict trends. Now, when we think about what kind of things we can do, we know that we can do scoring, for instance, to make a sentiment analysis of a text, to be able to predict behavior. The quality and accuracy with which we can predict the user's behavior is incredible. This morning we heard about autopiloting and cars and so on, and now we have Uber going to the next generation of vehicles, trying out in Pittsburgh cars that are driven automatically. That's a consequence of the evolution of machine learning. It's not only the capacity of doing something, but that whenever you do it, you learn. I mean, the machine learns from each one of these experiences. So I think that the concept of machine learning in particular is the concept, and it's a set of technology that is more transversal to any type of solution or any type of experience. Any type of experience, independent of whether we are thinking of the final consumer or the company or medicine, banking, or e-government. There is a scenario there to extract intelligence from the data, provide pertinent information, and make automated responses on the basis of that information. When we think about how we can implement these things, at present there is a discipline. It's the data science, which analyzes data, mathematical and statistical models, but it is important to democratize this concept of machine learning. Ashes in our cloud technology allows us to simplify the use of machine learning. So we have two algorithm and the process behind those algorithms to make recommendations. For instance, I want that at the time a client buys a certain product, I can recommend another product, because most certainly my client is going to be interested in that other product. Now, as we evolve and as we go up the level of machine learning, there are certain scenarios that are interesting to be taken into account and better built and pre-built. I've got algorithms, and I can check how it works and how can I see the accuracy of the algorithm. I'm going to go a step further up, and this is cognitive serving. This is a photograph of my boxer dog, and I am maximizing it and I'm analyzing it. It tells me that it's a dog, that 99.99% it's accurate. It's outside, it's on the grass. it's brown, and so on and so forth. The analysis of the image on a server using machine learning gives me the opportunity to provide the image and obtaining information. Just imagine what use I can give to this from the technical standpoint. I can tell you that I have a group of APIs providing and if I give an image, I have a JSON with the information detected from that image. When we talk about cognitive services, we are talking about images, but we are talking about sentiments, or we can turn audio into text. Each one of those services are provided in forms of APIs. I could develop a mobile app with GeneXus, and I can integrate the service of cognitive services to analyze the text and the sentiment of the Uruguayans who are putting in comments, for instance, in hotel reservations. Now, there is something quite easy and quite funny when we talk about emotion recognition. To recognize emotions in an app, I mean, what's the face that could be interesting to analyze emotions? Let me choose someone that you all know. Let's make it visual. You have several photographs of Suarez, and it detects emotion with the highest percentage. 84% of the accuracy says that Suarez is happy. Now, depending on the type of solution I'm making, I can have certain tolerance margins. And I can say, well, this is pertinent provided the confidence level is above 80%. And here, he's angry. And then he's sad, 14%, surprised, 20%. Happiness, 100%. Well, you can play with this at home this evening. Now, if we take this to real life, last Tuesday, I was having a cup of coffee with Ibernet and his partner. They are the founders of an Ibersmarts. It's a hyper-successful company with a base in Europe and Australia, giving solutions, mobile solutions, so that salesmen in a shop, without having a buyer going to the cashier, it's the salesman who closes that sale. Their challenge was to authenticate users. That is, when the salesman was going to record the app, it could happen that another salesman was coming in and so on and so forth. So what they decided to do was to introduce cognitive services, to introduce face recognition. And that's one of the differentials that is being used in Azure's cognitive services. And what they've done is that they've implemented one first instance of login on the basis of a PIN, but then with the camera of the device, it gets the face of the person, and on that basis it recognizes the person, and then the sale is authorized. That's a very specific experience of using cognitive services. An app developed in iOS devices integrated with Azure's cognitive services for face recognition. And when we look at the capacity of cognitive services, we can create many things. There are ways, I mean, the paradigm of the potential of this makes it complex for us to imagine everything we could do with it, and how we could introduce image recognition, text analysis, voice to text, and so on. The potential behind it is extremely interesting. And then the next phenomenon I'd like to share with you, this morning someone was talking about this, Glastornik and Sebastian were talking about bots designed for this events app. The bots phenomenon is quite interesting. What's it? Well, why is it interesting? Well, first of all, users in general spend much more time in messaging apps than in other apps. And there is an enormous opportunity here for brands, for companies to connect with users through messaging apps instead of having to take users to the application itself. It doesn't mean that if I'm in a messaging app, I can't contact the bots of my bank and say, what about my account, or whether I would like to have an Uber. So the service behind it automatically solves this interface. And this is very much related to what we were saying right now. To make this truly effective and for experience to be effective for users, we have to have enough intelligence to understand the natural language so that the user's experience is friendly. If I require a sort of robot as a user, well, that's not interesting. The interesting is, well, how much money have I got left? How much is my CTA? And the bot can interpret each one of those various ways of asking. That's where the intelligence lies. That's what bots stand on the concept of machine learning, and particularly of processing in order to interpret the text and then generate a friendly experience. There is a saturation of users right now, but this allows you to provide a much wealthier and interactive experience, much more enriching experience. And at present, with this habit of messaging, that's far more friendly than calling someone to tell me, okay, what have you done, and this and that. And then I have to go back and press the number again, and so on. And then because you don't find it, you go by default, and so on and so forth. The experience is to be able to chat with this box that is behind. In fact, it's intelligent people who are able to interpret and know who we are, and then know what we can look for. If I say I lost my credit card and need a new one, they already know who I am, and I can get in 48 hours. And perhaps they can tell me which of these two cards have you lost. From the technological standpoint, this is an area we have particularly invested in. That's the Microsoft Bot framework that we announced in April this year. The idea is to provide several components that allow for the development of bot in multiple platforms. I mean, I can stand on bot framework to solve, on the one hand, all the infrastructure of interpreting natural language, and we can solve it beforehand. Then we can have an algorithm to train it with my own concepts and terminology, the type of vocabulary I use, and then we could have connectors that allow us for that bot that I developed could start working in Facebook or in SAP or in Skype. So part of what we are providing are the multiple connectors to be able to develop one bot, thinking of bot framework, and then support it in various platforms that support from the API standpoint. So there's a very interesting scenario to create new experiences for users. We're talking about machine services, machine learning, we're talking about bots. Apart from being extremely interesting, these are phenomena that we can start using, and these are different scenarios that we can start building on. From the standpoint of Azure, this means trying to use certain components of all these bots to be able to build the adequate architecture. You know, if you have a machine learning scenarios, I'm going to use Azure's machine learning combined with something else. That is to provide experiences of this type, and the capacity of providing a platform of an easy access independent of the technology we're using and the development using GeneXus or Python or Java or PHP to provide the service modality that can be used from any platform and from any device.
Algunas ideas. Primero, creo que estos...
To wrap up, then, I think that these 5 concepts of technology are exponentially evolving. Users change, and they change more quickly. We have to innovate. That's the paradigm, to make it pertinent, and to make it pertinent in our industry, in our segment, in our market. Innovation is strongly based on technology. And lastly, competition. We should always be careful about competition because they come from unexpected places. As developers, in general, generically, those of us who are able to create experiences around technology, we have an enormous opportunity and also the enormous responsibility to create new experiences for our customers, users, and for our own company to be more efficient and more proactive. And that's where the enormous potential to continue building and continue working and continue building on digital transformation. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to share this.